is up, guys? Thank you for coming back to the show. This Andreas interview was amazing. All his social media links are at the bottom. There was a corruption in the video, so this is going to be a podcast style video. Enjoy it. Put your headsets in, close your eyes, and just listen. Hey, YouTuber fans, streaming fans, cryptocurrency fans. It's your boy, Brit VR. Welcome to the show. We have a special guest today, Andrea Antonopoulos. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you, Britton.
All right, so we're going to get right into it. I have a couple of questions for you that I really want to go deep into Bitcoin blockchain really quick. So the first question is, with Bitcoin being valued as gold, do you think in the future people will spend it like normal money?
I think people spend it like normal money today and will continue to spend it like normal money. Not everywhere, not all people, for different applications, different uses, but there are people who spend it like normal money today, and I do, for example. Okay. And so do many people I know. Just like people also do that with gold. They don't do it very often. I think the big difference is that we can make it much easier to spend, much easier to transport, much easier to divide than gold. It's better than gold in every possible way. So I think it will be used as money and is currently being used as money.
Now, I noticed that everybody is building on the layer 2, so they're making these extra chains. But why isn't a lot of companies, blockchain companies, building or helping out layer 1? For example, I'm not trying to advertise a company. I know a company that is using layer 1 to send the data to all the miners or to all the nodes faster. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, there's a ton of development happening on layer 1. Okay. I think what you're seeing is that a lot of the user-facing applications are moving to layer 2, and layer 1 is used more for infrastructure applications, and that makes sense because you can achieve different characteristics on layer 2 than you can on layer 1. So there's a lot of development, although it's primarily protocol and infrastructure development on layer 1, including things like improvements to mining protocols, low latency communication between miners, pool and mining pool protocols, improvements to transaction capacity, transaction security and privacy, and various optimizations to make the capacity of layer 1 even greater. All of those things are happening. In fact, there's a whole package of changes that are currently in review by the developers who work on the Bitcoin core software that involve quite significant improvements to layer 1. And this package is commonly known as Schnorr Taproot TapScript. It's a collection of 3 different Bitcoin improvement proposals that work together, including Schnorr signatures, which are a different type of signature than the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, and 2 related technologies, Taproot, which is a way of encoding the transaction scripts that gives us a lot of efficiency and privacy, and TapScript, which is some changes to the scripting language that not only improve it, but also open the door for future enhancements and make it even easier to do future upgrades. This is all building on top of the SegWit change that was made in August of 2017. Segregated witness, if you've heard of that. And so altogether, there are a lot of things happening on layer 1. What's not happening on layer 1 is the kind of fast retail transaction work, the front-end wallet-facing aspects of Bitcoin that have more to do with Bitcoin as a spendable currency for retail transactions. And the reason for that is because it's not efficient to do that on layer 1. It's not efficient to have everybody in the world verify with the same level of security a coffee shop transaction for one person. It's much more efficient to do that in layer 2, where you can do it as a series of smart contracts between parties, get all of the security of the base layer, but be able to do it with final settlement in a matter of seconds instead of 10 or more minutes, and very high speed and down to very small transactions with very small fees, and do that with enough capacity to serve millions of transactions. So that fits in layer 2, and we're seeing a lot of very interesting application developments in that layer.
So that's exactly what I was talking about. I knew a company that is working on making transactions a lot faster, but you have to have a lot of servers hidden somewhere, and you can be manipulated by more, people saying, "Hey, I'll pay you to let my transaction go through faster than someone else transaction that just goes on the blockchain, and their information is not transferred through all the nodes as fast as other transactions." So, I think that could just end the bottleneck. But why isn't people working on that?
So on layer 1, the way to achieve scale involves a reduction of decentralization, and you need more trusted intermediaries, which is why in Bitcoin the choice has been made to not prioritize increasing scale a lot on layer 1, but instead to increase scale on layer 2. On layer 2, you can do very fast transactions with very low fees without having to trust anyone, without any centralized servers, and without any loss in privacy. In fact, quite the opposite. You have the same level of security and more privacy than you have in layer 1, and can do transactions really fast. So I think that's why the focus of those applications has shifted.
Okay. Since we were talking about SegWit, to my understanding, SegWit over time, the block size can enlarge. I think I read that in a white paper. Why haven't the block size enlarging yet, since we're still having a bottleneck in Bitcoin?
So SegWit actually increased the capacity of the base blockchain by changing the way the accounting for size and capacity was done in a way that was backwards compatible with existing clients. But in order to take advantage of that, you have to use segregated witness transactions. You have to use transactions that use SegWit inputs and create SegWit outputs. And to really take advantage of it, you might even want to use native SegWit addresses. And so you'll probably notice that at the moment there are 3 different types of Bitcoin addresses that exist on the network. Addresses which starts with 1, which are the original, traditional, if you like, Bitcoin addresses. There's addresses that start with 3 that contain scripts, either multi-sig or SegWit scripts, and things like that. And there are the new native SegWit addresses that start with BC1 and are all lowercase characters. So BC1 addresses, native SegWit addresses, give you even more capacity on the base blockchain. So there is work being done, and you can take advantage of more capacity and lower fees on the base blockchain. But there was a very deliberate decision made to not increase the base block size yet on the base blockchain of Bitcoin, because it was believed that that would lead to centralization of miners and centralization of nodes, because the bandwidth costs to sync a blockchain for the first time or to maintain a full node would basically price out a lot of the people who run nodes today, and force it into fewer and fewer hands, which would make the network more susceptible to attacks. So that's the decision that was made. In that case, some developers disagreed, and they forked Bitcoin and created other forks in which they made the opposite decision and increased the block size quite significantly. And now the market can choose which of the 2 approaches each person prefers. You can choose independently which one you prefer. But that's certainly how the decision worked out.
Okay. So we're going to move on a little bit to Ethereum. So why do you think Ethereum integrate the equal hash algorithm, or like coins like Horizontal and Zcash, into their smart contracts and their blockchain?
I don't know that they did integrate them. I know that it is possible to construct smart contracts that can verify a number of different algorithms, including zero-knowledge proofs. In fact, there are zero-knowledge proofs implemented as Ethereum smart contracts. And again, this is not a question of Ethereum deciding, because Ethereum isn't a monolithic organization. This is basically various developers choosing to make smart contracts that can validate various proofs from other blockchains for whatever reason, including introducing technologies like ZK snarks. And, in all of these cases, it's not a matter of choosing one instead of another. It's choosing to do one and another and another and another. All of the options are still available, and it's more a matter of which choice you make first, or which choice each individual developer makes first.
As you've seen on YouTube, some YouTubers have been getting censored, but crypto just came out today and said YouTube responded to them and reversed a couple of things that were going on. We're always talking about decentralization and our money. What do you think about the decentralization and different platforms like Steemit or Library or DLive, something like that? Do you think more people need to move towards them? But it's kind of hard for them to move towards them because there's not a lot of people that watches those platforms. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, that's the classic chicken and egg problem. I think you captured that really well. So the background here is that over the last week, a bunch of channels had some of their videos taken down for violating YouTube's community guidelines, and they had a couple of strikes against their channels. Turns out that YouTube apologized for that, said it was done as a mistake, and maybe I'm thinking it was probably they made their algorithm a bit too aggressive. You see, I think in this case, a lot of people start looking for some kind of conspiracy that Google and YouTube have been directed or have decided to cause problems for cryptocurrency companies, or to take positions, basically, to take a side between the banks and cryptocurrencies. I don't think that's the case, quite honestly. If they wanted to do that, they certainly could. They're a private platform, and they would get to do that. But I don't think that's what happened here. I think what's really happening is that a company that has now, I don't know, hundreds of millions, billions of videos, and with the cryptocurrency space, there are hundreds of thousands of videos that have a variety of perspectives, including some, many in fact, that are outright scams. Over the years, for example, I've had to do a number of copyright takedowns where people who were running pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes with various well-known pyramids like BitConnect and OneCoin, I'm sure you've heard of these scams, which stole millions and millions of dollars from innocent people. They used my videos in order to build the impression that that they had support from various people in the cryptocurrency space. So in order to build credibility, they would take clips from my videos and mix them together in such a way as to change the message, or make it appear as if I endorse these things. And I asked YouTube to take them down because I don't want my image being used and my work being used to promote scams. Now you can imagine there are thousands of videos like that. Where there are a lot of scams that are operating in the cryptocurrency space because there's money involved. So obviously there's a lot of new and naive investors who easily fall for these scams. And so YouTube is probably taking down thousands and thousands of videos a week. And we usually don't notice because the ones they take down are mostly scams. Because they're doing an okay job with dealing with that. If you are operating on a platform where you expect them to have some rules and to offer protection by dealing with fraud like that, then the consequence is that sometimes they calibrate things too broadly and they start taking down legitimate videos that are not scams, that are not related to scams. because their algorithm is fired. It's not like there's some committee there looking at each video, watching it carefully, and deciding yes or no. This is all done with automated systems with very little human supervision until someone complains loud enough, and then they start going through rounds of appeals. The real question is, do we want platforms where Google or YouTube acts as kind of this daddy figure that takes care of its children and protects them from bad investment decisions or from misinformation or from bad speech by choosing which videos to delete and which videos not to delete? That's the fundamental problem. And of course, many libertarians would argue, and I would honestly agree, that I would rather have an environment in which anyone could post anything they want and no one could take it down. And people had to make responsible decisions about what they watch and what they allow their children to watch, rather than putting that power in the hands of Google and YouTube. But that's the platform we have. So then the question is, do we want to build these new platforms that give us complete censorship resistance and decentralized control? And does the rest of the audience want those platforms? You know, part of the problem here is that most people don't want to have the complete freedom to watch whatever they want. They want Daddy YouTube to protect them. They want Daddy YouTube to protect their children and do their parenting for them. Not everybody wants decentralization. Not everybody wants the responsibility that comes with having free access to information. So it's a difficult choice. Now, in my case, it's also a different choice because the vast majority of my work is explaining Bitcoin and open blockchain in as neutral terms as possible, in technical terms, not about the investment, not about the money, but about the technology, the application and its social implications, explaining it to people who are brand new, explaining it to people who don't know anything about it, explaining it to people who are not into crypto. And, well, they're not on these decentralized platforms at all. In fact, if anything, they might go on to these decentralized platforms after they watch my videos and understand why this stuff is important. So in order to reach the new people, in order to reach the people who haven't yet seen anything or don't understand this technology, I have to be accessible on the platforms. And, you know, it takes time, right? It's like curating a channel and posting videos and populating videos takes a lot of time and work. I mean, it takes a staff of people who I have funded through my Patreon channel, another centralized platform, who pay the salaries for the staff who are doing all this video curation. So it's not as simple as, oh, let's also add it to Steemit, let's also add it to Library, let's also add it to these other platforms, because that it's not as easy as that. It takes a lot of work to start posting to multiple channels, managing multiple channels, and doing all of that. So in my case, it doesn't make much sense at the moment to be on a decentralized platform because my audience isn't there and it takes a lot of work for very little return. I kind of need to be on the mainstream platforms in order to provide people with who don't know about crypto.